Lord of murder shall perish, but in his doom he shall spawn a score of mortal progeny. Chaos will be sown from their passage. So, saith the wise Londo.
Hi there, welcome to Mages and Murderdads. I'm Cameron.
And I'm Danny.
And today we are, once again, talking about Baldur's Gate.
Every day.
Well, we don't talk about it every day. But I'll be honest, we do talk about Baldur's Gate probably 4 days a week.
We talk about it more than our listeners hear about it on this podcast.
100%. So, this is Season 2.
You may not have been aware that you were in Season 1 when you were listening to Season 1, but you were.
You were. So, yeah, we've arbitrarily decided to divide this show up into seasons, where a season correlates to version of the game that we played. I think we might have said that at the end of the mini-sode, the last episode. If you didn't listen to that last episode, you should check it out. It's pretty cool. We just talked about Forgotten Realms lore. It's one episode back. But yeah, so we're just Season 2, and we're talking about Siege of Dragonspear now for the next several episodes. And Siege of Dragonspear is the expansion pack?
Yeah, this is I don't know, you probably know a little bit more about the history of video gaming than I do. But this installment...
Yeah, I know a little bit about Space War.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you're talking? You're talking about Space War? You're talking about...
Talking a little bit about alien curmudgeon invaders.
Mm-hmm. You're talking about Ralph Baer and the Magnavox Odyssey.
Oh, I'm thinking about Paperboy : the Zombicide.
I don't think is that a real game?
I don't know. I didn't even know if the last one was a real one. I didn't know. I thought we had made a right corner into just making stuff up.
Oh, into absurdity?
What you said.
No, Ralph Baer is a real person. He's a very important figure in history of video games.
Oh, yeah. Him and John Warcraft, right?
Him and John Warcraft. John Warcraft is... you got to make some distinction points, but maybe even more important than Ralph Baer. But anyway, why were you calling on my expertise?
I don't know. I was going to say that I think Siege of Dragonspear as an installment in the Baldur's Gate story, franchise, is kind of strange, right? This is Baldur's Gate 1 came out back in the year of our Lord, 1998? Is that right?
Sure.
Yeah. Baldur's Gate 2 comes out a few years later, which is a continuation of what happened in Baldur's Gate 1.
Yeah.
Tales of the Sword Coast came out sometime in between those. There's like a little bit of extra content in Baldur's Gate 1. Mm-hmm. Years later, like almost a decade later, Siege of Dragonspear comes out, and I think
more than a decade later, actually.
Oh yeah, no, you're totally right. This is like pretty recent. When did Siege of Dragonspear come out?
Within the last year.
Oh man,
yeah, I think it came out. Yeah.
We're playing a new game on the Baldur's Gate podcast, which
my God,
strange.
I like that this is occurring to you right now.
Oh no, I did not think about this at all before I played it, and I have not thought about what I'm going to say at all before we went on air. So, But no, this is pretty unusual for video games, right? Does this happen with other franchises?
I can't think of another franchise that has had such a long gap. And in particular, like the kind of production history that this game has had, right? So Beamdog, which is the company that has made Siege of Dragonspear, is this company that went to Interplay, or whoever has inherited all the rights to Interplay, which is the company that I guess not produced but published the original Baldur's Gate games, and got the rights to create enhanced editions. So in the first season we played Baldur's Gate Enhanced Edition that had all kinds of benefits to it that you can hear us talk about in the very first episode of Mages and Murderdads. But so they did that, and then they have used that I guess artistic license well, not artistic license, the actual legal license.
Literal license.
That they've negotiated between, I guess, the original rights holders and now Wizards of the Coast to create these new games in the Forgotten Realm universe. So yeah, it's actually really, really weird. And mostly because I think it's weird because it's normally a rights issue, right?
Sure.
Like, games are hard. It's hard to get all the original agreement holders of a game from 15 years ago or for 10 years ago to agree to let you make a new game. That's just hard to do.
Yeah.
So,
and it's also even weirder. They could have done that and made Baldur's Gate 3, but they didn't. They made Siege of Dragonspear, which takes place in between Baldur's Gate 1 and Baldur's Gate 2.
Yeah, the kind of well, initially when Enhanced Edition was announced, there were lots of people who just, in the kind of press and, you know, in the general ecosystem of video games, who just straight up called bullshit on the idea that they could even get that license and they could even do it. There was a lot of open questioning as if they had the license or not, so that was interesting. But yeah, the rumor immediately was then that they were going to be working on Baldur's Gate 3, and the continuing kind of cultural rumor, and I'm curious to hear about what listeners have to say about this, if they think this is true or if they've heard this, but I've heard from several different people that Siege of Dragonspear was more of a proof of concept, or a proof of ability even, that they could do a tight, contained story that was kind of predetermined, right? It can't go on forever because Baldur's Gate 2 happens eventually, so there's a pretty tight, constrained space. And this was the thing that they could say, hey, look, Wizards of the Coast, look, fan community, we at Beamdog can make a Baldur's Gate game that you really like, and now we can make Baldur's Gate 3.
Interesting.
That's the kind of rumor mill kind of stuff.
So, like, really interesting kind of history with this game, and also it's going to, you know, because we're playing the game chronologically in universe, we are playing Siege of Dragonspear now, we're not playing Siege of Dragonspear last, but it is going to be interesting because we are moving from 1996 to basically 2015, 2016 here, in terms of a lot of, like, game advancements, game mechanics. Like, a lot of the game it's still a Baldur's Gate game, but, you know, we're going to talk about later some mechanical differences. And it's going to be interesting looking even further into the grimdark, tyrannical future of Jill Stein, thinking about the transition from Siege of Dragonspear to BG2. Like, it's going to... There's so many words we've yet to say, audience, and we're just going to keep saying them.
There's going to be... not only are we jumping forward in video game design, but we are jumping forward, I think, and we'll talk about this in a little while, but we are jumping forward in role-playing game design. And by that, I mean, like, Dungeons & Dragons pen and paper design. I think this game feels different. This is what we were talking about before we recorded, but this game feels different than Baldur's Gate 1 and 2.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to be talking about both today and in the future in a general kind of way, but also this season we're looking to do some stuff like interviews. We're looking to look at some professionals and some critics and some just other people who like Baldur's Gate, some, you know, nice tight stuff to kind of go in here and supplement just listening to us blather on and on. There's also new theme music. You've already heard that. Brian Taylor did the new theme, and it's a great replacement for the thing that I made fairly quickly before we launched this podcast, which I think has been very successful. I have zero apologies for it. We might go back to it one day. We might go back to an auto-tuned remix to be period appropriate for when Baldur's Gate 2 came out. We'll just find out. But
kind of doing a Wire thing right now, though.
We are totally doing a quote-unquote the Wire thing right now.
Mm-hmm. Which is great.
You got to keep a devil down in the hole.
Mm-hmm. I think Weeds did that, too.
No comment. So you can hit the like button on these videos if you like our show and you want to help us out. You can also subscribe if you have not subscribed. You can also follow us on Twitter. You can support the show on Patreon, and you can click the little like button on Facebook. All those things really help us out. If you like the show, please share it. I know a lot of people have been really... We have like a very surprising number of people who really like the show and are quite vocal about that, and we are really, really appreciative of that. And that's exactly what we need, right? We don't spend any money on advertising for the show, anything like that. If you like listening to us talk about these video games, the best thing you can do is tell other people that. And
No.
us that. You should tell us that all the time.
And we really appreciate it. And I sent Kunzelman a link a few days ago.
Mm-hmm.
I was checking out the Baldur's Gate subreddit, seeing what people were talking about on there, and just unbeknownst to us, somebody had posted our podcast and said, "Hey, check this out," and that is so cool. And we really appreciate. We appreciate the fact that we have, and I think I told Kunzelman this, we have penetrated the Baldur's Gate subconscious. We have, we're in the community. We're a part of that conversation.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And we love to be part of that conversation. If you haven't seen the show before, too, this is a little bit of tidbit of information. But what you see on the screen is not necessarily what we're talking about. It's more of a general feeling. So often it'll be the same kind of thing, but sometimes we'll be talking about stuff that there's just no video for. It's kind of a fun time visual audio relationship.
Mm-hmm. And those few times where it does match up, that just makes it all the sweeter.
It's also an accident if it does.
It's because you are dragging it from the video file into and then you hit publish.
Raw video feed. It's a pure aleatory surrealist game.
Mm-hmm.
There we go.
Nice.
So, Danny, what happened? What happened? How did we get narratively from the end of Baldur's Gate, where, spoilers, you kill the big bad guy, Saravok.
Oh, so dead.
He's so dead.
Slumped in a corner in a temple
with
with his 2 minions 30 yards away just watching it happen.
And if you don't know that story, you should go back and listen to...
Oh, spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert, the last episode of Season 1, or second to last episode of Season 1. But how did we get here? How did we start?
Yeah, so... basically, there's no real narrative footwork that happens at the end of Baldur's Gate proper, as far as what happens to your character. There is you murder Saravok. You see a little cutscene about Saravok's soul disintegrating, and a little hint that there are a lot of other balls spawn, and that's it, right? So as far as the main character, there's no exposition done on that.
Yeah.
So Dragon Siege begins, Dragon Spear rather, begins with you descending into a dank tomb with some flaming fist people and Imoen, which I was immediately very surprised of, because I left Imoen at the road leading out of Candlekeep.
Yeah.
She was just, that's where she was. So I was very surprised to hear that voice again.
Mm-hmm. And Imoen is kind of your adopted younger sister.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We didn't really talk much about her because I don't think either of us had her in our end party, did we?
Nope. No,
Yeah.
I dumped her as soon as possible.
Yeah. She's kind of hot garbage.
Yep. Just not my favorite Baldur's Gate 1 character, but she becomes
yes.
kind of radically important over the rest of the series.
Yeah. So we are in this. We kind of find ourselves in a tomb. We're in the Korlaz family tomb, and through Imoen, we're told, "Boy, howdy, we really just got to clean up these Saravok cultists." So the stage is set. Saravok is dead, but his loose-knit organization and cult is still around, and we're kind of on a cleanup mission. The big baddie is dead. We just got to make sure that these people don't abscond away into the desert and pull a Al-Qaeda in Iraq situation. That they don't metastasize into something worse.
Yeah, you got to just make sure. This is some real medieval kind of response.
Yeah.
Pure eradication of the ideology.
Yeah, and the only way to do that is the pure eradication of all of the skulls in which that ideology survives.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal.
Mm-hmm. But that's the mission we're on. And I mean, given it's one of those things in the fiction, given how what is Saravok about? He really just wants to bring about as much murder as possible. There's not as far as an ideology goes, it's one that you kind of feel a little bit safer eradicating because it's just real bad.
But you know what you got to do to stop all the murderers? You got to murder them, and that only helps Ball too. He puts you in a real bad spot.
Oh, but that was his plan all along, right?
Exactly.
He's just the king of bad spots.
Yeah, the folio that Jurgle gave to Bane, Mercule, and Ball was death, tyranny, and bad spots.
Bad spots.
Yeah, that's the worst kind of thing you get.
Yeah. No, it's a real rough one. But so there's that level of that's where the game begins for the character. The last thing the character did in the previous game, pop Sarevok. That's you don't see the character again until they're descending into this thing. There's also another like story hook as far as like a crusade that people are really worried about. What's the deal with that?
Yeah, you know what? I'll be honest. For this episode, we have played just this opening kind of gambit for the game, right? This opening dungeon. And so we've learned in voiceover about this person named Kalar Argent, which is just the most fantasy ass name. Mm-hmm. I mean, my God.
It is a step above Belt. One of the Grand Dukes of Baldur's Gate.
Not anymore. Well, in my game, I guess he's still around. Belt's still around for me. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so Kalar Argent, and then we get this like opening animation video thing that says, hey, there's this person, she's rolling all around the north. She's doing all kinds of good stuff and also some bad stuff. Oh no, bad stuff. Mm-hmm. And also, maybe she might be a child of Baal. Like, hands up, we don't really know. But it's pretty explicit in that in that opening video that's probably what's going on here.
Yeah, either she's a child of Baal or the fact that she isn't a child of Baal is a really big deal.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like there's not a way that this plot advances and she isn't a child of Baal and it's just like, oh yeah, it's no big deal that she's not a child of. That's going to be the big reveal.
Yeah.
If that is the case.
Just a really like a good superhero.
Yeah. It's one of those situations.
Drizzt Do'Urden, child of Baal.
But
Bruenor,
yeah, so
Battlehammer, child of Baal.
But it's one of those things where that's in the opening section, but the first hour, or in Kunzelman's case, 2 hours.
Yeah, this took me 2 hours. I was going to say that later, but yeah, that is true.
Does not have to do with Kalar Argent, so we can kind of set that aside for now.
Yeah, there are a couple cultists who, in leaving or in fleeing, leave behind like notes that they're going to go join the crusade. So it's important in that way that like any rando who wants to abandon their home and job right now can go join a murder crusade that's going across the northern Forgotten Realms. Mm-hmm. So I guess that's important.
Yeah,
that's just kind of like it's like the public works of the early 20th century, but tyrannical.
Yeah, well, it's also just kind of breadcrumbs a la the beginning of Baldur's Gate and, like, talking about this iron shortage. Like, it's just showing that the average Joe knows about this crusade.
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, but yeah, so we do that, and so I plop down, and I'm still playing Ticklevar. Mm-hmm. Sorcerer Supreme. Supreme Pizza.
Oh, man. You got that Eye of Agamento?
The Eye of Mentos.
Okay. Eye of Mentos, the fresh maker.
Mm-hmm. And so I plop down, and half of my so I like just roll in it, right? Mm-hmm. Like we all get going. I like talk to Emma when she's like, "We sure gotta clean out this place, Andy." And I was like, "Yeah, all right, let's do this." And we like roll through, and my characters are just like getting wailed on, like it's brutal. They're just getting destroyed. And then I slowly find out that half of them don't have weapons, most of them don't have armor. And all of my equipment is gone.
Ooh.
Not only that, as I'm clicking around and moving, half of my party keeps saying things like, "Our journey is almost over." Or like, "I feel the pull of adventure." And so they're basically saying they want to leave. And so I was like checking my reputation and all this stuff. Eventually I kind of like figured out, oh, this is probably like a plot-based thing. Like some of these characters might go away, I guess. But yeah, so if characters, I actually had to go Google this because I was so confused about why most of my characters had no equipment. So if your characters die in the fight with Sarevok, then they have no equipment.
Huh.
And it's all in one pile in the middle of the opening room. And I just didn't see it.
Oh, weird.
Yeah. And so I was like having a real hard time. So that's kind of how it opened for me. In just sheer panic. at thinking that I might have to like do something really hard here at the beginning.
I gotcha. So it was very stressful, but narratively, you begin this game with several of your party members naked, and with their equipment, they find it on the floor of the first chamber of the Korlaz family tomb.
Yeah, that has to be like very existentially distressing for those people.
Yeah, it's kind of like one of those horrible nightmares you have where you show up to school and you're naked. Mm-hmm. But instead of school, it's like your arch nemesis's cult's hideout. And you find your clothes in their hideout.
Yeah, I have
That's
that all
even
the
more
time.
distressing.
Yeah. And they have my school books, and they're all blank. And then my teeth all fall out.
Oh, God.
And then I forget all my spells. It's pretty messed up. So, yeah, the Flaming Fist is down here, too. And they
Or
just
three
want-
members of them.
Well, that's more than most places, I guess.
Yeah.
Unless you are the streets of Baragost. How about that?
True.
That's
True.
That's a little bit of local humor for you. But, so yeah. So then you just start going through this this dungeon. It's a dungeon.
Yeah.
Like kind of a classical style dungeon, or at least a new age classical style dungeon. We'll talk about that in just a second. But yeah, we just kind of move through it, and it's kind of room by room, and you get in a bunch of fights, and eventually you fight Korlaz. Mm-hmm. Laz.
Yeah, it got a little weird. The S and the Z seems a little redundant, but you know.
Korlash, heir to Blackblade.
But yeah, so that's kind of like the story hook drops you in Meteor Race. You cannot leave this place to like go to town to fuck around in a tavern somewhere. You are this is your life right now. This is your life. You're in this dungeon. You got to get through it to get through the interlude here. So that is how the game wants you to play it, and that's how we played it.
Yeah, and that's actually kind of the only story stuff that's going on down here. Normally we would kind of like progress through what we played kind of bit by bit or quest by quest, but there's really not that here. So what Danny and I kind of talked about before this episode is like, all right, well, Siege of Dragonspear is kind of radically different in a lot of different ways from Baldur's Gate 1. So we're going to spend the next like a little bit of this episode talking about like all of the mechanical and design differences.
Yeah.
Between that game, Baldur's Gate 1, Enhanced Edition, and this game, Siege of Dragonspear, Normal Edition.
So I guess the first thing we could talk about is the UI's got a little reworking here. It is not the UI you are familiar with from Baldur's Gate 1. I think that theoretically, had we purchased Siege of Dragonspear before playing the Enhanced Edition, we could have played through the entire Enhanced Edition with this UI.
It's a little bit better.
You think so? What are the improvements for you?
Well, so here's a critical difference. The original Baldur's Gate 1 UI either looks like, depending on how you want to think about it, it looks like dirt. Like dirt, just crappy dirt. Or it looks like a leather-bound book. And this is like your 13-year-old cousin's coolest version of a leather trench coat.
Ah, I gotcha.
That's Siege of Dragonspear, I think. Like it's like dark gray with light gray on top of it. It looks like it's Geralt of Rivia's armor.
Yeah, it's a little bit more. Also, even though you're saying it's cooler, I also think like aesthetically, it's just more neutral than what Baldur's Gate was going, and it's just like Baldur's Gate. You can age that game on that UI. Like, because of how noticeable it is, right? Aesthetically, and by the color palette. And you're like, man, that is sticking out in this screenshot. In the same way that if you look at, like, really old pictures of MMOs, the difference between WoW, where it's just, like, barely hiding around the edge, the vanilla one at least, versus, like, the old school EverQuest, where, like, the game, like, what your character even saw was, like, a quarter of your computer screen, because, like, the chat box and, like, the sidebar. But yeah, the original Baldur's Gate interface was like very noticeable. This one is like the color palette is designed to like not be that ostentatious, but still look kind of cool.
Yeah. So there's that. The inventory screen is a little bit better. It's a little wider. Things on the ground in your inventory screen are a little bit wider, and it's a little bit cleaner to like click from box to box. Like, that was like a very small kind of tactile thing, and I'm almost certain it's because this game was designed to also be played on iPads, so it needs to be a little bit cleaner. But yeah, there's a little bit more clearance for stuff, and it feels a little bit better, I think.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I didn't notice that many like actual technical, logistical type differences with the UI. I mostly saw the aesthetic stuff, but yeah. So you got some new stuff there, but we've also got some real deal mechanical differences in this game, and some of them I haven't even experienced. Kunzelman, you've talked about class skill dialogue options.
Yeah, so there's this quest, like one of the first quests that you can do in this dungeon, and there's this person named Amon, something like that. And what they want is moss, like some type of moss, because they want to go to Candlekeep, and their whole logic, right, if you remember back to Baldur's Gate 1, to get into Candlekeep, you have to have
a rare tome,
an expensive book. And so this person, Amon's whole thing is, well, what if I don't bring an expensive book, but I bring a formula that makes a book that's already there more valuable? This is a real, like, labyrinthine way of just paying the toll, right?
Got to pay the toll, troll.
Got to do that. So in conversation, I was just able to be like, hey, let me use my sorcery skills to just make this, like, fake mold for you. And so I was like, huzzah, shaman you wow, and here's some moss. And I did the quest that way.
Yeah, and I guess I don't have sorcery skills because I'm a barbarian. A 100% barbarian. I think if there was a question maybe a few episodes ago, hey, is Balthazar some berserker? Or is he a barbarian? No, he's a barbarian.
Just a straight up.
And I didn't get that option, but I was nice about it. I was like, yeah, sure, if I find some moss around, I'll do that.
And then you cleaved this person's head from their shoulders.
No, that's the thing, is I had the option to be like, hey, you're associated with Sarevok. You need to die. Like, even tangentially you are. But I was just like, Sarevok's dead, and this person's just an academic.
So you've really, or Balthazar has really calmed down.
I think so, because I don't have, like, a big quest of vengeance right now, right?
Wow. That's some real character development.
Yeah, it's just, really, I'm just on the cleanup crew. I've popped this jerk. I got him, and now the city's just asking me a favor, like, hey, we've got some real problems if we don't eliminate these cults, and I don't like the cults. They're bad. I just didn't read this academic as, like, a dire threat, like an existential threat to the body politic of Baldur's Gate. So
they're coming back to get you.
Well, we'll see.
But yeah, so this is something that's that I think is interesting, right? It kind of harkens back to Fallout and Fallout 2 and, like, that era of CRPGs that's contemporary with the original Baldur's Gate, but the original Baldur's Gate didn't have any of that kind of stuff, that kind of GURPSian kind of things. Although Temple of Elemental Evil, which is a 3rd edition D&D tactical game, did have skill checks, I think, right?
Yeah, they had dialogue, at least the ability to use your skills or other kind of abilities within dialogue. But no, I think we were talking about this, and this was kind of conspicuously absent from the initial Baldur's Gate game, given that it was present in Fallout, and given that that's kind of like, that's the stuff that you're used to doing in D&D, right? You're in a conversation, you roll a die occasionally, right?
I don't know. Like, I don't know. I didn't play enough 2.5 to, I mean, I guess it's like DM optional, right? In the sense of, like, where in 3 and 3.5 and 4 and 5 now, skill checks are integrated so heavily across all kinds of play, whether that's diplomatic play or whether that's kind of like puzzle play or combat or whatever like that. I don't know. I don't know if it was, I think you could just do, like, a grindy campaign of attacking. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and maybe it was just one of those things where, if you want to try to convince this character or something, you actually have to be convincing. You yourself in the conversation. A die cannot decide that. We're human beings. We can actually talk. We can decide that way.
Yeah. And also this game still doesn't have things like a skill tree You know what I mean? Of like, you've got diplomacy and acrobatics and blah, 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 in the way that 3 and 3.5 and all the other D&D editions since then have had. So that could be part of it too, right? Like, it just doesn't have the robustness of the system that Fallout had because it was using GURPS Lite, basically. The special system. So I don't know. I mean, I would love to have some real info on that. But
it is cool, and it's going to be cool for our playthrough because, Ticklevar and Balthazar are very different characters, and we're going to be good at different things, and we have different ability scores, basically inverse ability scores, practically, and it's going to just provide more opportunities for our narrative experience to diverge, and for us to be able to share our experiences with each other and with you, the Vissalure, viewer listener.
View a listener. Another game that had this was Planescape Torment, which came out from the same team before Baldur's Gate, so it's even more conspicuous. Anyway, so what about dungeon design? This is a dungeon, like a straight up, like in the way that we talked about how Durlag's Tower, which is a straight up dungeon, like a classic Tomb of Horrors style dungeon.
Yeah.
And this is a dungeon in Irenicus's basement house, the first area of Baldur's Gate 2 that we'll get to way in the future.
Dungeon.
That is a dungeon-ass dungeon. So talk a little bit, since I didn't play Durlag's Tower, maybe talk a little bit about the way this dungeon is designed and how you feel it compares up to like the other real dungeon that we've encountered.
Yeah, so I think it's interesting to talk about dungeon design in these games, and I feel like in one of the relatively early episodes, I'm thinking somewhere in the realm of like 3 to 5, we're talking about a plot point. It was after we got through the Cloakwood and we like went into that fort at the heart of Cloakwood and like rooted Raeltar out. On the way down, I remember us talking about the dungeon design because it got really weird. Like, there was an ogre down there, like an ogre mage, and just a torture pit randomly. Yeah. You remember that?
It's just random rooms kind of stacked together.
Yeah. And so that is very, like, reminiscent of a type of dungeon that D&D will make, right? Tiny little rooms, like one or two things in a room. Little thematic, like, linkage to each other. And so on one end, we've got, like, a kind of similar thing going on here, right? Where these are discrete rooms connected with hallways. At the beginning, on the first floor, it's fairly linear. When you get to the bottom floor, the catacombs, it gets a little like, you can go several different ways, but there's different weirdness going on. There is like an undead theme to the overall dungeon, but there's like, here's like a random room with beetles, and they're just beetles here.
Fire beetles.
Fire beetles. But so I digress. But when I think about kind of the comparison to this experience versus the Durlag Tower experience, there's a lot of similarities here. The first is kind of aesthetically, it's a little bit more linked. Like, it has an overarching theme, but you have those like departures, where you have like a room with a slightly different theme. In the same way Durlag's Tower, you had dwarf and traps, etc. Here's some elemental rooms, and this is just like an earth elemental room, and there's just earth elemental stuff here. And I got a little bit out of that, but the aesthetic dungeon design itself still feels very D&D, and it's got this kind of grindy feel to it. Is that kind of, you didn't do Durlag's Tower, but is that kind of, are we veering a little bit too far into encounter design? To me, like, dungeon design and encounter design, these are like very linked things.
Well, I also feel like, in the sense of the way, especially, so like Danny's saying, like, there's the first level and then a second level. Yeah, there's only 2 levels, right? Yeah. The second level in particular, it's the way that the map uses every piece of available space. Like, on the other side of every wall is another room, almost like we were using one sheet of grid paper. You know what I mean, to like plot the whole thing out. Like, there's something very D&D dungeon design to me about that kind of like So for example, there's this quest called the Shattered Staff, right?
This is a good example of that. Yeah.
So you like do stuff and you walk around in a big circle almost. And then at the end of that circle, when you're almost back to the place where you began, there's a wall and there is a ghost there. He says, "Oh, bring me my staff." Blah 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 blah. And so you have to walk all the way back around, and literally you could like draw that on a sheet of paper as 3 block rooms together that almost connect up again and then don't.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting, like in a game, especially a game made in the past couple years that has literally, from an isometric 2D art point of view, an infinite amount of space, right?
Yeah.
Like asset creation, as far as like the drawing is concerned, that is the amount of that's like where the time is in drawing the art.
Mm-hmm.
The pathing and all of that is fairly simple. So it's just this kind of thing of like we have to pack as much content, even if that content's only tangentially related, into the same floors of this dungeon. And that is a very D&D kind of thing, and it feels almost like like you took a 3.5 edition or a fourth edition module and read it, right? Like if you go back to like first or second edition D&D and you read those modules, they're basically just like sandbox descriptions, right? Short of like things that are just dungeons. Supposedly just describing a sandbox, right? Like, here's the ecology of all the creatures who live here. Here's what their relationships are like, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, where you would have an entire wing of a dungeon that was like, oh, and there's like a kobold little village here, not related to like your overarching goal to this campaign or to this module, which is to kill the kraken in the lake, right?
Yeah. And the way they'll do it is they'll be like, the kobolds will often bring sacrifices to the kraken, but they aren't related in any way, right? Like there's that kind of, clearly these ecologies touch each other, right? But they're not dependent on one another. But this feels very later edition D&D in that like everything is linearly attached to one another. It all fits in one coherent space. There's no gap for weirdness to be involved because that's just how you accept dungeons are made. They're all weird feeling.
Yeah, and so one big improvement that this had over Durlag's Tower, which I think that there was at least one commenter that's like, man, based on Danny's description, he certainly did love Durlag's Tower. I think probably betrayed by the fact that I like openly admitted, I just decided to like open up GameBanshee.com and take a trip down memory lane to like 1992, which is way before this game came out.
Probably before Game Banshee.
Probably. But in any case, Durlag's Tower, one of the things that just like frustrated me to no end is that in order to get from floor 1 to 2 or 2 to 3, you had to do all of these like very tedious little quests. They weren't side quests because they were necessary to get to the next place.
Sure.
There's a lot of stuff packed in here. There's like a little Shattered Staff quest. There's the Moss quest. There's like a hidden room with some torches. And all of that stuff felt very, very Durlag's Tower-esque. And I just appreciated the fact that I didn't have to do it. Like, I didn't have to do all of that stuff and like either spoil the game by looking at a walkthrough because I value my time, or like meticulously clicking on every little thing and like making sure that I find that tiny little space where a torch is.
There's nothing better than an optional quest.
Yeah, and I get more enjoyment out of it because I didn't have to do it.
I didn't get enjoyment, so there's this little hidden room, and you get there by lighting a staff or by lighting a torch and then putting it back in like the little torch holder. It's very like I don't know. It feels like a D&D book in like the best kind of way, right? But yeah, if you open a chest in there, it summons like a bunch of undead dudes.
That's even more D&D.
It was brutal. There was a lot of like touch a thing and summon a bunch of dudes, which is very, very D&D. That happens a couple times.
That's great
because there's nothing more predictable. It's basically like you walk into a room, there's a tomb, there's a skeleton in the corner, its dead eyes do not glisten. You touch the tomb's top, and the bones begin to rustle in the corner. But do
Did
that like
you-
9 times.
Did you run into any bugs with any of these quests?
Do you mean fire beetles?
I'm actually not. I was meaning any kind of like glitches.
Do you mean the dead being who haunts the net waves?
Do I mean features and not bugs?
Yeah, do you mean features?
Do
you
I
mean
mean
things that are definitely on purpose? No, I don't think I did. Why?
So I think the most. So I ran into 2, and the first one was just when I started. There was a very weird on the very first floor. You roll up into a group of people, and there's a dialogue thing that happens, and after the dialogue, it's implied that they will attack me, and they just didn't.
I had one guy not do that. Mm-hmm. Did you talk to him again?
I don't think I could. I think I tried to do dialogue and it didn't work.
Oh, one guy didn't do that. That could be like a flagging issue because one guy doesn't attack you, and once the thing's over, you can talk to him. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's it.
The other weird thing, bug or not. So in order to get to the final battle, which we'll get to later, you have to click a little mechanism to open the door.
Yeah.
There are 2 thieves in there. If you talk to them, they'll ask about you and they say, "Hey, what are you doing?" And then generally they'll just fight you. If you just go in there and click the thing and leave, they never talk to you.
Oh, that's some real oversight.
You just go in there. Oh, let's turn that, and I am out of here. They never initiate dialogue.
That's also amazing, though. You're like, excuse me, don't pay no mind. I'm the handyman. Don't worry about it. Boiler's off again.
It made me think back to the Sword Coast about that one cultist guarding the door that I just didn't talk to.
Oh, that poor guy.
And those a dozen cultists that are still waiting in a barn, starving, as I'm down here in this basement.
And they're a completely different cult.
They're completely different, totally unrelated.
I want that cult to come back.
Mm-hmm. Like we were waiting for you for 5 months,
16 weeks at a time.
But yeah, so we've got kind of dungeon design. We've got a little something familiar, a little things that are maybe a little bit more reminiscent of more recent D&D, but the stuff that we've been recognizing in D&D for a while. But the encounter design, I think, there are starker differences here.
Yeah, I felt like someone was torturing me with pliers every single time I entered that. It's like comical, just violence. Mm-hmm. Like a hostile style situation. I had such a hard time with this.
Yeah, there were several fights that were, how after I talked about in Durleg's Tower killing the Demon Knight and then going back to the name of that town. What was the town in Sword Coast?
Durleg's Beard. No, Olgoth's Beard.
Olgoth's Beard. There you go. I knew Beard was in it, but yeah. Olgoth's Beard, and there were cultists, and the fight of all of those a dozen cultists was just so much harder than the one Demon Knight. And these fights that are in this prelude are very reminiscent of a bunch of moderately a single enemy, no problem. I don't think we're not complaining if these fights were only a few of these people. But they're moderately difficult. They're just hard to hit. They've got good hit points and defenses, obviously. And there's just so many. There's more than a dozen at times.
If this cult had been present, if Saravok had just teleported here instead of the Temple of Baal deep beneath Baldur's Gate, he would have been fine.
Yeah.
If he had just teamed up with those fire beetles,
oh God,
he would have been fine. I would never have been able to get even close to him.
So yeah, we're talking about difficulty, but we've experienced difficulty before in Baldur's Gate, especially Ticklevar.
Yeah. One could say, I would say that my playtime has been roughly doubled due to having to save and reload this game.
But is it the same type of difficulty? What are the actual mechanical differences that are making this more difficult than it was before?
So yeah, it feels like I was saying before we started recording, this Siege of Dragonspear so far feels much more balanced in the sense of they feel tailored is maybe the better way to put it. They feel tailored to a 6-party, well-rounded group of adventurers. Whereas in Baldur's Gate, they felt more natural, right? Like
They felt more Gygaxian.
It felt more Gygaxian, so more true to first edition all the way up to like through second edition of D&D, which is like if you were out and about running around in hobgoblin territory, you're going to run into hobgoblins. If you are level 20 demigods, or if you are level 1 random dirt farmers, you're going to find hobgoblins in hobgoblin country.
And at the bottom of their cave, you will find a pit with 1 or 2 acidic slimes.
And they just live there.
And there's 2 of them, and it's only a minor inconvenience for your party to kill them. All they're going to do is make you rest. Like, it's not going to test your, like, skills to fight these things. No, that is, like, pure Gygaxian. They are there because they are supposed to be there narratively.
Because it is a simulation.
It is a simulation. Whereas these designs are designed around, we are going to challenge the player in tactical combat.
Yeah.
And we are going to, like, pose them problems that they will be forced to solve.
And so I was kind of likening these encounters before, when we were talking before recording, I was likening them to the way that 5th edition now has challenge rating. And in outside of this podcast, which I dedicate a lot of time to, I am the dungeon master of a 5th edition game, and a whole lot of my time is spent trying to kind of massage challenge rating, which is a way of describing the total experience amount of monsters or creatures for your party to fight against. Basically, it's like a way of doing combat math for encounter design.
Which CR, little tidbit, first entered the vernacular in 3rd, but it was kind of a little bit weirder system. 4th edition went to like an experience budget. It would literally just say, hey, if you're going to level up in 10 fights, you need this amount of experience budget, and every monster has listed like what its experience is.
And that's basically how challenge rating works.
Exactly, yeah. So these feel like budgeted encounters that are intended. Gone are the Gygaxian days of, there's a a fire beetle, because that makes sense because this is a little overgrown fire beetle cavern and just one lives there. No, you're gonna have you're gonna have an encounter of fire beetles.
Yeah, and so in some ways that's really good. Because it has the feel of the adventuring day. That's what challenge rating's all about, is like trying to balance the adventuring day where you use all of your skills and abilities across a whole day. And that's really cool. On the other hand, it doesn't feel very natural. It doesn't feel like a logical progression. Like in Baldur's Gate 1, we were wandering through the countryside and running up on a bunch of ogres that just smashed the crap out of me. And I still remember that brutal fog of war farming experience that I tried to pull off. Like, that's just how the world was. And here there's no, like, that's just how the world was. This is how the world is, very tightly designed. But it took me 2 hours to get through that, and it's just because I had to kind of try every encounter over and over again to figure out the right tactical and strategic, ways of using my spells and ways of in like who from my front line to attack and all that kind of stuff.
How long did it take you playing this before you discovered the strategy of cheesing the monsters back to the Flaming Fist mercenaries?
I think I discovered it on accident, actually, the first time. So when you first go down the first set of stairs, there's some undead at the end of that passageway. Yeah. And I just wanted to lure them back to the stairs so I could kind of like go up and down the stairs.
Bottleneck them a little bit.
Yeah, and the people helped me out.
And then you're like, here we go.
Mm-hmm. And so they're Flaming Fist mercenaries that kind of like, every time you defeat an encounter, come up to that encounter with you, and you can just kind of like train people back into them.
Yeah, and they are a force to be reckoned with. Like they're very strong. Mm-hmm. And they've got a caster with them, like a priestess, and they're pretty great. And Balthazar leaned heavily on them, not really out of necessity. I think with the right like preparation for each fight and making sure I've got the right buffs and spell effects, etc., it would have been doable. Mm-hmm. But I just, for the first 3 fights, I was like, I just want to do this faster, so I did it. And then, oh shit, they like died. Like before the final boss, they all died. And yeah. And
But
then
Viconia got a new helm, though.
from one of the Flaming Fist people?
Yeah, you know what I'm saying. So it worked out.
Worked out. Congratulations.
But yeah. So we had to do a little bit of cheesing, but not super. I don't know. We get the viewer listeners will be seeing the video, so maybe I did a lot more of it. But yeah, you know what? They gave their all, and I took everything from them.
You took exactly what they gave, which was their life.
Yeah, I kept getting backstabbed. At some point, there's like a party of adventurers you have to kill, and Ticklevar, specifically Ticklevar, kept getting backstabbed to death by that one guy. I would clear everything else out, and he would backstab me to death.
It seems like they may have reworked the way enemies use stealth, because I was seeing some mercenaries, like I remember in particular one like female model cultist running around, and there would be like little text above her head going into stealth, and she would like disappear.
Oh, so maybe they just use it now.
Maybe by reworking it, they're actually using it. But yeah, I mean, I never played a character that uses stealth, so I don't know if that's how it works. Like, you just go invisible, but yeah, it works that way. And there were a few times I got blinded, and like the fog of war just extends to everywhere except right around you.
Yeah, I think that's always been that way.
Well, maybe Balthazar's just, maybe his will save isn't as good. Or,
yeah. Oh, this is great. I can't wait for the fall of Balthazar.
Never like, in a billion years.
Like for Balthazar to like come to grips with his like, what is he, a half orc?
Yeah,
his half orcanity.
I don't think so. I think he's going all the way. He's going to be the most powerful thing ever.
Oh, okay. So then how did he? At the end of this dungeon, there's a final battle.
Yeah,
with Corlaz. How did?
Yeah, I initiate dialogue. Say I'm gonna murder her, and then run up and try to kill her, and then I die because everybody just attacks me. And
she
also
summons like 12 undead.
Yeah, and and this is something that I was beginning to get frustrated with. Generally in Baldur's Gate, you would like attack, and they would stand and bang with you until they like failed a morale save, and their like reticule or like their little signifier around them turned yellow instead of red. And then they would run away. But like enemies are just running away. Like they're doing tactical. I think it might be AI and like tactical repositioning, basically. Or just like, oh, I am an archer. I am going to like retreat to try to use my bow. And when I'm melee and I never use ranged weapons, it becomes very frustrating sometimes. But
yeah, I had that happen actually with one of like the mercenary band that you have to kill toward the end that I was just talking about, and like they were just running away but not fleeing. Yeah, and so like my whole party just kind of stood there and wandered around trying to hit them. It's very strange. Actually, I had such a combat hard time in this that I turned on auto pausing. And it was so annoying that I had to turn it off.
That was like, there are certain markers of like somebody gets hit, pause.
Yeah, someone gets hit, a spell.
Spell.
I have a spell. No, a spell finishes casting, a combat round ends, and some other stuff too. There was like 5 or 6, I think.
And you were like, it didn't seem to actually help you tactically.
Yeah, no, it didn't. Okay. Just because like a combat round is different for every character, and so it was like I was pausing at the end of every action, and it didn't seem to really be doing much.
Yeah, I guess for me, what really nailed this final battle and like the last few hard battles that I had in Baldur's Gate 1, so the Demon Knight, Sarevok, just really nailed home how as long as I've got a potion of speed, it's okay.
Okay.
But like practically impossible without. Like, it's one of those things where it's almost necessary for these hard fights. But yeah, in order to beat this, I like drank a potion of speed, ran all the way back to the beginning of the level, spread out her attack party like along that route, went up to the first level, went back down, killed a few people. Korlash turns the corner. Like, I have to like kill everybody except her. Like, even though you should be focus firing her down, she's got stone skin and mirror image and a bunch of stuff. Like, it's really tough. And eventually, I was able to get her.
That's a lot of work.
It was. No, it's like, look, this is the reality of the solo run here.
So I did all this prep work, like all this stuff. I'm like casting Chant, I'm casting Aid, I'm casting Bless, I'm casting Haste on everybody, I'm summoning skeletons, summoning monsters with my monster summoning wand that I have left over from the Cerebok fight. Doing all this stuff, I tried a couple times, I'm just getting stomped. Like, I'm having a very hard time. I have 2 priests, but I'm not quite sure how Turn Undead works. I think it just makes them run away at my level. Like, it doesn't destroy them. So that's, like, not really working out too well. So I just had Dinah here, who has Fireball as a spell, and a Wand of Flame or Wand of Fireball or something that I got from, I think, the Ghost, from the Shattered Staff. From that quest, or somewhere here in this dungeon.
Might have been Amon, actually.
Okay, that guy from Amon. Somebody. So anyway, so eventually I just, like, save my game, cast Haste on Dinah here, have Dinah here run into the hallway right before the Korlash room, and then just blind fire with her Fireball wand into Korlash's room without ever talking to Korlash.
Which means Korlash hasn't cast any defensive spells.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll just do that. And the first, like, couple times I tried it doesn't work, and then the last time I try it, it kills everything.
One kills everything?
Yes, one blast kills everything. And so I just get this, like, dialogue. It's like, all right, fine, I surrender. Take me to jail. Take me to the Flaming Fist. And so then I win.
Wow.
Yeah, if only Cerebok could do that easy.
Yeah, she surrendered, and I told her she wasn't getting out of there alive.
Really? You slew her?
Yeah.
I did. I let her get arrested.
Yeah, it might have been because I watched Judge Dredd earlier today.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's affecting Balthazar's decision-making.
Is Balthazar basically Judge Dredd?
I don't know.
It's pretty close.
He's getting there. He's less... the thing is, it's not like the I am the law. Like, it's not as if he's not axiomatic in that way.
I mean, he is axiomatic, just not to the law.
To himself.
Just to an arbitrary distinction of the law. Which Judge Dredd in Dredd does. You know, Carl Urban does have his own kind of justice, as is revealed in that movie.
So we're not talking about beginning Judge Dredd. We're talking about the end of the movie.
Maybe Judge Dredd was that way the whole way. Michael, it's hard to know, right? But she did fail her test, but he did not fail her.
Ah.
So think about it.
I'm thinking about it now. Darn. Maybe I need to rewatch it.
Gotta think about it.
Yeah, but tough final battle, right? I mean, not
really, but...
Yeah, maybe you just need to stop prepping, disband everyone from the party except Dinah here, and Ticklevar. Just make sure she's as high level as possible, and then that way you'll just be blind firing Cloud Kill or Fireball or whatever the spell du jour is into the Fog of War.
I cannot wait to get to Baldur's Gate 2, where I can just use Cloud Kill all the time.
Yeah.
I've done that multiple times with that game. I'm so ready.
Oh, that's right. Ticklevar should be able to do it, right?
Oh, hell yeah, Ticklevar will be able to do it. I think he could already do Stinking Cloud if I chose it. But Stinking Cloud's not as good. It just makes people pass out.
Yeah. But no, we may get to a point in this series where the tables turn. Where Ticklevar's hard times finally are redeemed and Balthazar's easy street is deeply punished.
It's going to be like one of those, where 2 lines cross. Where the word ideology and the word meme over the course
just
of the
intersect
20th century.
and then separate again. Maybe. But this is the typical nerd fantasy fulfillment, right? All these jocks show you up early on like when you're in school, but you're gonna be their boss.
Yeah, I use my draconic blood to learn Melf's minute meteors and fling them in the face of my bullies. Yep.
Man. But yeah, so, you murder...
Well, no, I didn't.
Yeah, you murdered... Oh, you don't. You capture.
Yeah.
Or you take care of.
I put into prison a undead cult murder-worshipping murderer.
And that's the end of the chapter, which was chapter 7?
Question mark.
Question mark. Yeah, it's weird.
Very unclear. If someone could explain this to us, so the last chapter of Baldur's Gate is chapter 7, but at the end of this episode, we begin chapter 7.
Or are we ending chapter 7?
I don't think there's ending dialogue. I mean, there is ending dialogue, but I don't think it says the chapter for it. I think it says when the new chapter starts. I don't know. If anyone can clarify what chapter this is at the beginning of this game, it would really help us out.
And the first person that responds, we're sticking to that.
Yep.
So
don't be wrong and don't make a joke.
Yeah, but be earnest and be right,
just like we are all the time.
That's a nice one.
Yep. So anyway, yeah. So we've never played this game before, and it's going to be kind of rough and tumble. We kind of knew the basic plot of the original Baldur's Gate because we both played it before, and we could kind of plot it out. But for this, for Siege of Dragonspear, because we haven't played it before and because we don't want to spoil it for ourselves, and please don't spoil any of the game for us in the comments, though we definitely want to talk about what we've played so far. But the idea is we're going to play one chapter per episode.
Yeah.
We're going to try that for the next episode and see if that works or not. It should. I don't know why it wouldn't.
Let's hope so. If it doesn't, because some of the chapters back in Baldur's Gate, some were longer than others or more complicated than others. If it doesn't work, we'll check in, we'll have a talk, and we'll hopefully come up with a solution. All of the complications that this podcast has faced has not stopped us.
No,
and I have
not even the Elminster minute could not stop us.
Not even the existence of. The well-regarded, well-reviewed, beloved Elminster Minute that someone in development chose to excise from the podcast, who will remain nameless.
No one knows.
No one knows. Not even that stopped us. So, don't worry about it, viewer listener.
Nope. All right. Well, that's the end of this episode.
It is.
There's no more
thanks
content.
So much. Yeah, that's it.
If you like this, hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed already, hit the subscribe button. There's a whole bunch of social stuff in the description for the episode. Go click all of that. Literally every single part of that helps us. And if you like this episode, please tell at least one person about it. If you can get 5 more people to enjoy the show, all that wealth will come back to you tenfold. I have a very nice triangle diagram to explain how that works.
Yeah, we'll feature that in the next. Actually, if you can get Kunzelman to $6,072 per month on Patreon, he will release that triangle chart to the public at no charge.
It would be at a charge, but you will have already paid the money for it. Yeah,
you will. At that point, he owes it to you.
Well, anyway, all right. Well, the end of the episode. Thanks for listening.
Thanks. Bye.
Goodbye.
So said the wise Londo.